We were strategic about using a restaurant week model, which is relatable to a lot of people, but we specifically put it in the heart of Hispanic Heritage Month to be able to celebrate all the restaurants that have Latin cuisine.
That's the voice of Monica Casarez. She's from Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week, an event that runs for 10 days and starts October 4th. It promises to be a celebration of tasty Latin cuisine. So on today's show, me and Randy Walker talk with Monica and Juan Carlos Dueweke Perez about all of it. Also around town, there's a historic building that's being demolished for 12 parking spots and a hard seltzer festival coming to Royal Oak. I'm Jer Stays, and this is your Daily Detroit for Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019. Let's get right to it. Joining me in the Fisher Building studios of Daily Detroit, Juan and Monica from Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a unique kind of gathering because it seems to be very community driven. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what's on offer? Because this is a lot more than just your typical, include some names that folks will know, but it's not just like a couple of the places. There's a lot of places involved.
Right. We have 24 restaurants participating this year, which is great. We were strategic about using a restaurant week model, which is relatable to a lot of people, but we specifically put it in the heart of Hispanic Heritage Month to be able to celebrate all the restaurants that have Latin cuisine that are celebrated theoretically during Hispanic Heritage Month. So we have restaurants that represent not only Mexico, because of course the area is commonly referred to as Mexican town. So people understandably think most of these restaurants, if not all, are Mexican, when in fact we have restaurants that represent countries of Puerto Rico, Honduras, El Salvador, the Dominican Republic, and Venezuela, in addition to at least 4 or 5 different specific regions of Mexico.
We'll circle back to Mexican food and the kind of regions, but let's talk about kind of the regions that are involved and what are some of the great aspects of each.
As anybody can understand with any kind of food, the geography and the climate, the weather affects different products. So going through Central and South America and into the Caribbean, when you start getting into the island countries like the Puerto Rico and countries near there, you end up with a lot of use of bananas and plantains, which aren't used in other cuisines. So that's just a very small example.
Yeah. So let's get into what people can expect. It's going to be a fun time. There's going to be a lot of places. Let's talk about how this restaurant week kind of comes together for the attendee. Is it flat rate pricing? What kind of dishes are we going to see? I understand there's something kind of interesting about this, that the menu items are exclusive.
So in putting this year's Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week together, we decided that instead of asking chefs to lower their prices, we were going to ask them to introduce a dish that was representative of their culture or of the region or of their country during those 10 days. And we ended up with 22 different dishes. 2 restaurants will offer something very similar. And in that, we also have different options such as halal dishes. We have one vegan, multiple vegetarian, and a couple of pescatarian too.
So, and how does this break up? Does this by restaurant then? So each restaurant has something specific that you should try?
Yes. So if you go to the website, which is swdetroitrestaurantweek.com, the homepage has every restaurant listed. You click on the restaurant and it'll bring you immediately to a full description of their dish offering, as well as a photograph of it and other details that you may want to know when attending that particular restaurant. But for the customer or the guest, really, it's just pick your restaurants, look at the dishes, go enjoy, have fun. We approached each restaurant and asked them to dig deep into their culture, into their recipe box, and even into their personal homes and offer something. So all of these dishes are a real, true, from the heart offering, but as well as high-end cooking.
So what are some of the dishes that these restaurants will be showcasing?
One of the most exciting ones are carne en su jugo, which is something that I grew up with as a kid. And it was like my absolute favorite dish. And we only had it every now and then at either restaurants or at different like friends' houses. We have a dessert called capirotada, which I think a lot of people from Jalisco will like whenever they hear about it. Lamb chops at El Asador, entomatadas at El Barzón. Whenever you go, I would also argue that you should explore the rest of the menu of these places because they are phenomenal.
At another time.
So let's, you mentioned about Jalisco. One of the things I think people forget about Mexican food, that it's a lot more than, well, fajitas, which aren't actually Mexican food. I think those are an invention of Texas. So there's a lot more to Mexican food, and there's a variety of regions, right?
Yeah. So
wait, I'm not getting ground beef with shredded cheddar cheese.
there might be only one place that does, but that's a Tex-Mex place. Mexico, as I say it, Mexico has 32 states, and it has multiple regions. Triángulo Dorado represents northern Mexico, including Chihuahua, Sonora, and Durango. And their food in itself has a lot of spices. It's really meat, like meat heavy. Sometimes with pork, sometimes with, beef, but it's really greasy food. However, you have other places like northern Mexico. Luis Garza from El Asador is from Nuevo León, so he represents that region. You have Puebla, Hidalgo, Michoacán, and Nayarit, very heavy on seafood, and of course Jalisco, which I would argue that it's where the majority of Mexicans are from in the area of Detroit.
But there's also nothing wrong with a sizzling plate of fajitas. No. They're amazing. They're luscious. They're delicious. Melted cheese is fabulous, and it is creating a culture here in Southwest Detroit that's a comfort food, that's familiar, and these generations are enjoying that as well. We're just offering that there's so much more to explore than scratching that surface. But yeah, I love fajitas. So
yeah, it's like going to New Orleans and ordering a chili dog, a coney dog, or you can, but it's not going to be exemplary of the cuisine in the area.
I mean, if you go down to New Orleans, you got to do, like, to me, muffaletta, or you got to get a po' boy or something like that. I mean, anyway, I could go into a whole thing.
But at the same time, you could go to a New Orleans style restaurant in New York City and it would be completely different. So
absolutely.
Eating the food of the area is a better representation of that food.
I know, Randy, with some of the stuff that we have covered and talked about before, that you're a big fan of this kind of curation. Why do you think it's important to kind of focus a menu like these folks have done here, as opposed to kind of offering like the giant broadsheet?
Well, I think since they're showcasing a particular dish of their area or region, it gives kind of more insight into the region itself. Like, for example, the coastal regions are featuring seafood, but that kind of also hints at what kind of life the people there have. Seafood in the Mexican regions. The climate there is warmer. They're coastal, so it would be distinct from, somebody up in the more central or mountainous areas, for example. So just trying the food is giving it a peek into what the life is like there in those specific regions.
You can even get into other things, for example, migration and lifestyle. When you talk about, being in a coastal region where it's, relatively always warm and like so cozy and beautiful, people from coastal regions tend to have personalities that are a little more relaxed and they're very peaceful. And you can like learn so much about a lot of people through food, which is also one of the things that drives me behind doing this work, which I would say is not work.
Right. It's a lot of fun.
One of the things I also want to point out about the event itself is that we really took the effort to make it fully inclusive in multiple ways. First, we're thinking about folks who are vegetarian and vegan. Second, we're thinking about folks who are pescatarian. Third, we're thinking about folks who eat halal. And, we want to be respectful of Islam. And we also want to be inviting. But then the one thing that has been more prominent is that our social media, our website is in Spanish and English so that it can be inclusive to both people from our neighborhood, Latinos that are also outside of Detroit, but everyone else that wants to be invited.
So people want to go check this out. I encourage them to. How do they do it?
The website has the current restaurants, pictures of the food, each dish in full description, and that is www.swdetroitrestaurantweek.com. Of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram.
And this is a limited time thing, right? So let's talk about that.
October 4th through the 13th. Also, use the hashtag SW Detroit Restaurant Week or SW Detroit Eat.
Beautiful. Thank you for coming to Daily Detroit.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
The Detroit Saturday Night Building, opened in 1914, is not long for this world. The former newspaper headquarters at 550 West 4th Street is going to be demolished for 12 surface parking spots for luxury condo residents in the building next door. The building is already flanked by 2 surface parking lots, so when this is done, the half block in the middle of downtown will be basically flat. The reason why Detroit City Council is signing off on the deal is complicated, but according to the FREEP, the city's retirement system is on the hook for more than $31 million in loans to the project. That all went to renovating the historic and long-vacant Fort Shelby Hotel next door. The hotel and apartments opened back in 2008. However, a couple years ago, when the tax credits ran out, the residents whose leases expired were moved out and the building converted to luxury condominiums. So, if condo sales don't hit targets, the pension fund takes a hit. And it turns out that condo sales at the Fort Shelby aren't going so well, or so they say, as future residents need more parking, hence the demolition request. Preservation Detroit and Detroiters for Parking Reform had advocated for saving the building to no avail. There is no timeline for the demolition, but those in the know believe it's inevitable at this point. So here's where I'm going to jump in, because there are things I want to point out. First, let's not forget the developer, Emmett Moten Jr. He has a long history with the city of Detroit and was the development czar for former Detroit Mayor Coleman Young. He had a hand in many projects and helped put together the controversial erasure of the Poletown neighborhood for the GM Detroit Hamtramck plant. So there's a track record here. But back to today. I went to the Fort Shelby's website and saw that many of the condos have been sold, and the 15 remaining listed as available range from a one-bedroom at 939 square feet for $299,000 to a penthouse at $1.25 million. So I ask, at those kind of prices, why aren't we remodeling the Detroit Saturday Night Building as residential? Why do we have to demolish it to create a surface parking lot? Couldn't we get more creative around parking and create more value? And look, I get it. I've been around long enough to know Detroit City Council had little chance of voting against something that could be perceived as hurting the pension fund. The vote to begin the work on making the area a historic district that then would have given a temporary reprieve of the structure demolition failed 7-1 with one not present, according to Curb Detroit. But the thing is about places like the Saturday Night Building, once they're gone, they're not coming back. And to take it out for a surface parking lot when 40% of downtown is already devoted to parking? Well, to me, that seems like the short-sighted thinking that kept Detroit in these messes of the last few decades in the first place. And before I let you go, I wanted to let you know about an event that you'll either be very excited about or very much not. All Fizzed Up is coming to the Royal Oak Music Theater this December 27th. Think drinks like the now ubiquitous White Claw. Think, well, all of the hard seltzers. The event, according to press materials, will have 20 companies with 60 different varieties of that hard seltzer. Frankly, it sounds like a low-calorie boozapalooza. Tickets start at $40 and you'll have to pick up drink tickets that are $5 for $5. We'll have a link in the show notes. There is no word, and we didn't ask local police if there will be no laws if people drink White Claws in Royal Oak that evening. All right, thanks for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Don't forget that we're people-powered, and thanks to our members, join us at patreon.com/dailydetroit. I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.